All right, we got the SL9 here at like 160 yards. Silhouette target. Let's see if we can hit some stuff. A little Kentucky windage maybe. Oh yeah. Go for the little target. Yep, got it. And I can feel my last round bolt hold open just functioned, and we just ran through that little stick mag right there. So yeah, it's a really fun little gun, and I'm surprised actually the 9mm does just fine at this distance. I had not shot 9mm this far before. Of course, an AR-9 is most fun up close. All right, welcome back to Hoffman Tactical. In today's video, I'm going to be introducing the SL9 lower receiver to you. This particular one, I have a 10-inch 9mm up on here with a KAK bolt and buffer, and our 3D printed pistol brace right there from the version 1.9 Gen 3 stock system. So let us try some rounds for this guy. All right, 17 rounds does not last very long. That is why we use the little 30-something rounders. So now let me go over its features in detail. Okay, here we are back in the shop, and I'm going to go over all of the different features on the SL9 that are interesting and you might want to know about. So a lot of the features here are very similar to the SL15. I already did a video on that, but maybe not in quite as much depth as we're going to do in today's video. So if you're interested in the SL15, a lot of these features here are similar, as I will discuss. So starting at the very front, we have the metal front takedown pin plates, and this is the same ones on the SL15. They're machined aluminum plates that are sandwiched between these two cheek plates, and they use a 2 /4 bolts that come in through this side over here, and you can see the 2 nuts over here on this side. And these are the same bolts I've used on all of my lowers back to the very beginning pretty much. And these metal plates can also be 3D printed, so you don't have to use the aluminum plates, it's just an option. And the design of the cheek plates and aluminum plates allowed for lower cost aluminum plates to be machined without all the complex hex pockets and stuff for nuts or whatever. So moving back then, the most interesting feature here is going to be the last round bolt hold open. So you're going to notice we have a magazine inserted, and I have the, you can see the magazine's follower right here. And then we have this little hook right here. This guy here is the sliding lever, I call it. And the sliding lever gets pulled up and down by the follower on the magazine. It in turn rotates the forward lever, which is right here, the forward rotating lever. And the forward rotating lever sits in this little pocket, and it right now is in its lifted up position. Now the forward rotating lever has a hex hole going through it, and there's actually a hex shaft running all the way through here, which you can't see because it's underneath the plastic. But it starts at the very beginning here, slides in from the front, and extends all the way back to the rear lever back here. Now the rear lever moves up and down, and it in turn moves your bolt catch. So it's really a very simple system. The two things that are keys here is the separation of the forward lever into the sliding lever and the rotating lever. This was actually done for layer adhesion reasons, because if you try to make it all one piece and just have it bend up, you just swing up in one single motion, you end up not being able to find a print orientation where the layer adhesion is good for both the hex hole and for this little tongue right here. So splitting it into a sliding piece in this allows optimal orientation for strong parts without having it split out to layers. Back here, the issue we had back here for a while was just not having enough leverage and having the force vectors in the wrong direction. So what I ended up doing to fix that was this little lever, instead of pushing up on the conventional, you'll see right here there is a little boss which sticks out of your, this is just an AR-15 magazine catch for reference, and that's the little boss that normally engages with an AR-15 follower, because an AR-15 mag is a big guy right there, not this little AR-9 mag, not this little Glock mag. Trying to push up on that little lever using this lever simply doesn't work out because the force vectors are going up in this direction and the movement's in this direction. So they're like 90 degrees opposed, and you get a lot of friction and not much actual useful force transfer. So instead what I've done is I put the lever underneath the entire, bodily underneath the entire AR-15 magazine catch right there, or not magazine catch, but bolt catch, the AR-15 bolt catch right here, the actual metal part. The plastic lever goes underneath that and basically forces it up from the bottom, which works really well, and we've actually had 100% operation, like not a single malfunction out of this version of the last round bolt hold open, which is really cool. So that's kind of what makes this new AR-9 so interesting is that it has this last round bolt hold open mechanism, which works so nicely. So it kind of gets rid of the biggest drawback of the AR-9, which is not having a last round bolt hold open. So this is a nice feature. Right here in the middle of all this, moving on, you'll notice a component right here, which is also 3D printed. This guy is the ejector. So as the bolt comes back, the shells smack into this surface right there. And I don't know if you can quite see it here. I'll show some macro shots as well. But that surface right here has a little tiny little mark on it. That's where the shells hit. And you might be surprised because this particular component is normally made from steel in basically every other AR-9. I think the Endo Mag is an exception. For Mean Arms, they use a plastic piece just like I do, and it holds up just fine. So this little guy here is printed in Overture Easy Nylon. It can be printed in PLA, but I found the Overture Easy Nylon to be the most resilient option for the job that's also easy to print. So it's actually held up really nicely in plastic, just fine, you don't need metal. This guy right here just presses into a pocket, and there's a ledge over here. I'm not sure if you can see it, but there's a ledge on this side, back here at the very bottom, and this ledge is actually what retains the ejector right here, because the ejector is just a friction fit. What actually holds it in is the upper receiver. When the upper receiver comes down, it presses on this ledge and holds it in there positively. So don't use glue on this guy, it's not needed. The upper is what holds it on. So this guy is printed, which saves you having to buy some custom metal part. So that's cool. And then once we move back from here, everything becomes pretty normal, which I'll mention in a second. But the one last thing I want to talk about here that is unique to the AR-9, of course, is the magazine well. So the magazine well is just an AR-9 magazine well, nothing particularly special with it. We have a flare on the bottom down here, a nice little flare magazine well, nothing super extreme, but it's nice to have a reasonable flare. And then the one feature I've added on the AR-9 since my last version is the over insertation stop, which is a little boss. You can't see it here. I'll have to throw in some other B-roll of it. But the over insertation stop is just a little boss on the left-hand side of the magazine well that keeps you from pushing your Glock magazine in too far past the magazine catch. And I've weakened the spring on the magazine catch a little bit by making its hole shallower, which makes it you need a catch with this version more than you did in previous versions. So not a catch, but a over insertation stop. So the over insertation stop is over here, and we actually had a failure with it on this particular AR-9 here while filming SL9 while filming the video, and that was due to really poor layer adhesion. And if you've noticed, just looking at the shots here, this guy has some pretty ugly Z banding on it, some over extrusion spots. It's got a lot of under extrusion on top. That's because this was actually a 14-hour print I did, a really quick print. I needed to get it done for the assembly video, and I wanted to get the latest version that had all the little minor changes. So I ended up printing this guy overnight super quickly. So I'm actually surprised it's held up as well as it had, because it's totally printed without the proper recommended settings that I have in the documentation. So it's held up really well, but layer adhesion is definitely compromised, so we had some splitting there. But in all the rest of the testing, it holds up just fine with a print that's done even somewhat close to the proper settings. So that is that. And I guess the one other thing I should mention while we're up here is, of course, the magazine catch up front here on the right-hand side. This is what actually retains the magazine. It is also 3D printed, so you don't have to get some proprietary magazine catch. The printed ones hold up just fine. I have a AR-15 magazine catch spring, so it's a standard, easy-to-find spring underneath the button right here, and that goes into a hole that guides it, and that's what provides the spring force that keeps your catch in the closed position, and that works quite nicely. And then we have a single 7/8 of an inch long pin right here. I might have a 1-inch pin installed so you can see the ends of it, but it's intended for a 7/8 pin, and there's even a little slot in the bottom which helps you remove the pin. And speaking of removal slots, I've tried to integrate considerations for disassembly on this guy as well, and that's why you'll see there's a little hole right here. That hole is for a 1/16 inch punch where you can knock out that hex shaft in there, and you just push it in there and you get it started, so you can grab the front of it with pliers and pull it out. That's just for a disassembly. So that pretty much covers all the AR-9 parts. I will just kind of highlight the rest of it, but it's important to understand that rearwards of basically that little hole right there and kind of the last bolt hold open mechanism, everything else is the same as on the SL15 I recently released. It's an AR-15 back end with the AR-9 front end on it is really all it is. So everything else back here is the same. We have our fire control group. It does have the accommodations for the little brass pin bushings in there. It has an integrated grip right here, as you can see, same as the SL15. There is a little set screw which goes in right down here, and that set screw is what retains your detent and spring for your selector switch right here. So that detent and spring is retained, selector switch goes there, so there's a set screw you have to put in. That's different than on a standard AR-15, and we have to do that because the grip is integrated and we can't use the non-integrated grip to retain that spring. And then we have the small little support rib over here on the right-hand side. This guy is small enough where you can use an upper with a forward assist. Really, most uppers that are not some weird profile, basically, if it's not bufferless, it should fit just fine. So some of the bufferless uppers, like the 9mm bufferless uppers and such, might not be compatible because they're really wide and might not fit between the support ribs. But any standard AR upper or AR-9 upper that's not bufferless should run just fine. And then over here we, of course, have the support rib right there, same as the SL15, the newly profiled, nice, slim support rib, so that works really nicely. And then, of course, we have the hose clamp. So in the last version of this, last video I did on it, it's a number of versions ago, I actually had a custom band on here that was not a hose clamp. I ended up doing away with that. We have embraced the hose clamp fully because of just basic advantages that it has over the custom design. Practical considerations. So we have a hose clamp right there, works excellently. I have the hose clamp cover over on this side, which kind of covers up the sharp part on it, getting rid of any real disadvantage of the hose clamp. And then in here, we have a carbine buffer tube, carbine length, and the buffer tower is thicker than a mil-spec buffer tower, so we have to use a mil-spec carbine length buffer tube because they have sufficient threads on them. Some of the some pistol buffer tubes and like an example is a carbine length buffer tube, but it's the civilian spec. They don't have as many threads on them, so it's important to look out for a buffer tube that has enough threads to accommodate the extra 1/8 inch of thickness we have in that buffer tower. And then there's just a standard end plate encapsulant under there, and since this is a pistol build, we do have the version 1.9 Gen 3 stock system included a brace as well as the standard stock we use, and that's what's on here right there. It's that version 1.9 brace on there on the back, and that kind of rounds out the entire lower. There's lots of geometrical features here you can look at. The geometry has been fully reworked from the last AR-9, so if you're upgrading from the version 1.2 AR-9, this is a complete redesign from scratch. So there's a lot of improvements. Ergonomically, functionally, everything has been carefully gone over, all the features to make sure everything fits properly and it works as good as possible. One example of that is on the way the bolt hold open is captured. I've moved the little ejection hole because we talked about how I'm trying to consider disassembly. I've moved the hole for removing the pin from the outside over here to the inside. So you can see there's a little hole on the inside there by your hammer, and that's so that when you use a punch to knock the pin out from this side over here, your pin just falls out on the inside. It just makes the outside a lot cleaner and as well as stronger because we're not cutting a big slot on the outside of the lower. So that's kind of everything as far as the overview goes on this guy. And of course, the best way to learn all the details is to actually print one yourself, and then you'll be able to actually hold it in your hand, look at it, and really see how it works. So that's what I recommend doing, and we'll go from there. All right, so one more thing I should mention here is you might be wondering where to find this guy. So this is YouTube. We do have to be careful out here, and all I can really say is that if you're looking for the digital goodness for this SL9 right here, I highly recommend you use Google, which is a great search engine. It's your friend. We love Google, and Google is your friend. Take the channel name, Hoffman Tactical, plop it into Google. You will very quickly find what you're looking for. Just a few clicks. Don't give it a little thought, but I think you'll find it very quickly. Don't expect to get there right away, but it's only a few clicks. So that's what I highly recommend you guys do. As of this video, the digital goodness for this guy is released. There is detailed videos on all the inner workings and putting it together, as well on other platforms, and those are all linked when required in the right places. So definitely check all that out, guys, and let me know what you think. I hope you enjoy this SL9. It's definitely been a fun project, and I'm really happy with how it's come out. All right, guys, that's about it for today's video. Thank you so much for watching. It's been a lot of fun. Definitely check out the SL9. The little AR-9s are really fun builds, and this guy here with the last round bolt hold open is extra practical. So I'll hope to see you guys again next time. Thank you so much for watching.